Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is arguably the least scary entry in the franchise, excluding stuff like FNAF World, which doesn't really count. The atmosphere, the sound design, and the jump scares themselves all failed to live up to the expectations set by the series' predecessors. Looking at Let's Player's response to the game only further substantiates the issue. Take Markiplier for instance. He is the king of FNAF after all. He has one, if not the most viewed Let's Plays of the series on YouTube. In his first episode, he was clearly startled by his initial death, but he clearly wasn't scared.
What's going on? Oh my god!
It was nothing compared to his reactions from earlier entries in the series. Watching Markiplier's first ever FNAF video, the tension is immediately palpable. Despite the fact that it's practically impossible to die on the first night, the tension only continues to build from there.
They used to be allowed to walk around during the day.
On the second night, when Markiplier game overs for the first time, that tension is immediately released in a massive jump scare, and you can tell just how effective it was. I mean, look at him.
No! Oh yeah! Fucking fuck! I tried to push it! Oh my god! Oh! Oh! Oh, game over indeed! Oh, are those my eyeballs? Oh!
Compare that to Markiplier's first game over in Security Breach.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, what's going on? Oh my god! Alright, well that didn't go.
There's absolutely no tension going into the scenario. The jump scare is clearly underwhelming, and Markiplier is clearly unshaken by the event. More interesting is what Markiplier actually says after this jump scare.
Alright, well that didn't go. Well, actually, that went exactly how I thought it was gonna go. But it didn't go according to how I wanted it to go.
Let's take a look at FNAF 6, where the primary gameplay takes place in a vent. The claustrophobic environment, alongside the fear of the numerous entities out to get you, is truly effective. It almost evokes that one scene from Alien. By Markiplier's second video, his reaction to getting a game over is clearly that of frustration, not fear.
How'd you get there? I didn't even see you get in the room.
Shortly after that, the game glitches out, further breaking any immersion and reducing the overall scariness of the game.
Now we've reached a point of negotiation. I see that you have, noticed my handsomeness. That's not what you said. Well, I win. You lose. Every time. What am I doing here? Why am I doing it? What is my objective? I haven't a clue. Get a security badge from the kitchen office. Is this the kitchen office?
It is my belief that the FNAF franchise is currently torn in two directions, trying to appeal to two different demographics. On one hand, you have the people who grew up with the early FNAF games, are now young adults, and are expecting more from the series. On the other hand, it's undeniable that the FNAF fandom has a lot of younger members in it, and what appeals to those newer, younger fans doesn't necessarily mesh with that of the older fans. Let's take a look at some evidence. Security Breach was very clearly designed for kids, and there's tons of evidence to prove it. For instance, Vanny's knife was used in promotions, but was completely removed from the game itself. We can see in the in-game files that earlier versions of the dialogue had all references to violence, cuts, and blood removed from them. Not to mention, the animatronic designs, as well as the jump scares themselves, have clearly been toned down for the most part relative to the earlier games. If you've liked this video so far, please consider subscribing. I'm just starting out on YouTube, so every little subscriber helps, so please give it some consideration. Thanks, and back to the video. Even in the hidden audio logs, the therapist goes out of their way to explain what the words subjective and objective mean.
When I read your account of what happened, it came across as, well, more of an objective rather than a subjective narrative. Oh, sorry. You don't know what that means, do you? What I mean is that the way you told the story is more like you were reading something from a book.
These aren't uncommon words, but they are ones that a lot of younger gamers might not be familiar with, and the game deliberately caters to those gamers by defining the words in the very source log that they appear in. However, on the opposite end of the spectrum, there has been a lot of really cool, really scary stuff produced in association with the FNAF franchise lately. FNAF Plus is absolutely terrifying. It evokes the same kind of fear that the original game did, but with the advantage of resources that simply weren't available to Scott back when he made FNAF 1. I know many will try to argue that anything stops being scary once it's repeated enough times, but FNAF Plus proves that people aren't just sick and tired of the FNAF shtick. We haven't grown immune to it, we just needed it to be explored in a new, unique way. FNAF Plus has been absolutely crushing it on this front. The Walton Files is another example of a great analog horror series that builds on the trends set by the early FNAF games, but tells a much more mature, human, and relatable story than the FNAF games ever did. There's just something about the rundown 80s 90s aesthetic that makes the whole thing creepier, and Security Breach's sleek and futuristic pizzaplex just doesn't instill the same kind of creepiness.
Jack, Susan, Charles, Rosemary, Sophie.
That's not to say that the older fans weren't thrown a bone in Security Breach. Some of the logs provide subtle, spooky lore reveals that would probably go over the heads of younger and newer fans. And then we get to the code. Hidden within Security Breach is a strange code on a wall, and the process of deciphering it was something else. Dawko ran a whole 10-hour effort to crack it, and the solution was, yeah, let's just say that very few kids would be able to figure this thing out. The best part is, the final decoded message is actually among the spookiest things in the game, so the effort was well worth it. However, it's but one bit of deep lore in a game that lacks overall tension and scares. It seems to me like the FNAF series is moving more towards its target audience of kids, whereas its derivative works like the aforementioned FNAF Plus and Walton Files are moving more towards a mature take on the series. I think that's a solid compromise and a nice way to make sure everyone is included, but the consequence is subsequent main series FNAF games probably just won't be as scary as they used to be. They'll continue to target the teen rating for the time being because that's the primary demographic. You can't fault them for that, it's just something to be aware of. Regardless of what happens to the FNAF franchise in the future, its legacy is already cemented. FNAF helped to popularize the analog horror genre that now dominates contemporary dark content. Stuff like the Mandela catalog is absolutely brilliant and terrifying, and I think we owe the early FNAF games a lot for popularizing that genre.
And Mark, I have a gift for you. I have a present. I have a surprise. I will not hurt.
So, even if the main series FNAF games become less scary over time, we can rest assured that the series inspired a whole new generation of creators, many of whom are making the darker, scarier content that we crave. As always, thanks for watching, leave a comment, check out my other videos, and if you dig what I'm doing, I'd very much appreciate your subscription. Thanks, and have a good whatever time of day it is.